everyone, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. I'm Andrea, your webinar host for Main Street ROI. This series is sponsored by all of our partners: Active Demand, AdRoll, SpyFu, WooRank, AdThis, Optimizer, and iContact. Whew, that's a big list. For today's webinar, we are really excited to welcome Sean Leonard, CEO of Active Demand.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for taking the time to meet with me today. And yeah, hopefully I use your time wisely. So today's presentation, we're going to be talking about managing messaging consistency in multi-channel marketing strategies. And some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is hopefully accessible to everybody, but I'll also have some stuff for those folks that are advanced marketers as well. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a worthwhile use of your time. So today I'll talk about some of the challenges we face doing multi-channel marketing strategies, and I'll talk about choosing strategies. What is the right strategy to address some of the risks? And I'll actually go through a couple of examples. Specifically, these examples are going to be how we as a company are doing our own multi-channel marketing strategies. So hopefully you'll learn something in this process. And again, don't forget, you can ask questions and we'll have a Q&A at the end of this. So I think that it's one of the things that's very nice today is we have a lot of options as marketers. It's a case that when I was a younger fellow doing marketing, the options were, go to a trade show or, hand out flyers or something like that. But now with digital marketing, there's a lot of advantages and there's lots of options from a marketing perspective, marketing choices that we have. So it's a case we have a lot of different communication channels, whether it's social, online, SEO, emails. Print is still a valid strategy in some segments, et cetera. And one of the things that it's very important to understand, regardless of the channels that you're choosing, is that there's going to be multiple touch points. It's a case that, and the story becomes much more complex if we combine multiple touch points with a multi-channel marketing strategy. Now, I think that taking the approach of, putting bets on a lot of different tables and trying a lot of different things as marketers, there is some advantages to it, but I think we face some significant challenges as well. Now, I think that no matter what marketing strategy you choose, or which channel you choose, rather, I think that the number one challenge facing all of us, especially in digital marketing, is building trust. It's a case that, unlike in the old days when there was a trade show and we had a big booth, somebody knew somebody's going to be spending a lot of money on that booth, the company must be real. Or a brick and mortar store, when you see the building or you see the storefront or you see the business, there's something tangible there. But when we're doing digital marketing, on the other hand, it's a case that it's relatively easy to fake it, so to speak. So today people trust nothing, so to speak, and I make that assumption that they trust nothing. So as a digital marketer, we need to build trust. I think the next challenge, and this has faced us all in marketing, is regardless if it's boots on the ground marketing or digital marketing, there's trade-offs. Unlimited wants, limited resources. We have to make choices. And I think it's a case as marketers, we all face multiple buyer profiles. If we're only selling to one individual person, once we sold to them, woohoo, our job's done. But that is never the case. So there's multiple buyer profiles. And there's lots of different strategies. And quite often it's a case that usually it's a case we're in a situation where there is only one website. So we have one website and we have limited marketing resources. So it's a case that I know there's 24 hours in the day, and if that's not enough, let's work all night. That's not really an option. So the reality is in any marketing strategy, there's going to be trade-offs. So challenge number 3, and this is a big one that we really need to, I think, focus on, is that putting ourselves in the buyer's chair, so to speak, we have to realize it's a journey. not a visit. And then if you were participating in one of the previous webinars, there was lots of talk about, last click is dead. The reality is it isn't just one click to sell. It isn't one click conversion. It isn't a visit. The prospect is going through a journey. Ourselves, when we're buying stuff online or making purchases online, just think about that. No matter how big the product is or how small the product is, we're going to spend a bit of time trying to make the right choice. So as a vendor marketing, it's a case we have to realize that the prospect is, it could have been, 80% of their time could have been spent before they actually introduced themselves to you. And the question that we're going to be facing, whether we're doing multiple channel marketing or single channel marketing, is how do we maintain a consistent storyline through the multiple touch points the prospect has with us? What is their journey, and how does the journey relate to what our messaging, et cetera? And we have to, in order to build trust, maintain consistency. So really, the solution to accelerating the journey and building trust is really well-targeted messaging at the right time, consistency in the messaging, because if you're changing the message every time that they engage with you, clearly trust is going to be eroded. And so I think it's a case that as marketers, we're going, of course, to need to make choices. So really, from a choices perspective, and there's many choices we can do, is if we're doing multi-channel marketing, is one choice would be to go with the generic messaging. And the second that I'm going to be talking a lot about in this presentation is the concept of adaptive marketing for multi-channel messaging. So if we think about the first choice, which is generic, is it's sort of aiming high, and we're fishing with nets. It's really to focus on value statements and remove the buyer out of the story, right? Because really the variance is really the individual. So if we can just focus on, what is the problem that our product or service solves, and remove the person out of the story, then it doesn't matter where the person engages with us or how often they come back or whatever the story. It's going to be a consistent story because the person is out of the story. Right now, the advantages of this approach are clearly there's consistency. Right throughout the entire journey, whether it's the first time they've been to your website or first time they read one of your social posts or first time they see one of your ads, through to where they're getting closer to building making a buying decision, the messaging is going to be the same no matter who the person consuming it is. And the reality is you're fishing with a very large net, right? Because you've abstracted the person. The person isn't there. So if there's a person with that problem, you're addressing them. And it's easy, it's safe. Some of the disadvantages, though, is that you're removing the emotional aspect from the conversation. Right? There's no way to really get something to resonate with the prospect, right? We can't focus on the individual's specific pain points, right? And everyone on this phone has competitors, right? And they're all the competitors are in the same situation where we're trying to vie for limited limited purchasing dollars, and it's hard to differentiate when you're not personal with the prospect. So the other option, and there's multiple options, but the two that I'm focusing on are two very different ends, two very different extremes. The other extreme is something I call adaptive marketing. And it's really where we're aligning the messaging with profiles, individual buyer profiles. We're adapting to the buyer's behaviors, and we're engaging emotionally with each of the individuals through the buying process. So what is adaptive marketing? It's really the use of tools to adapt the messaging to the personas and the buyer behaviors. So my background, I'm an engineer, and it's a case that when I was a grad student, I was focusing on something called robot vision. And I remember going into my first grad studies course on robot vision, and there was very short story here is that I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm very good at linear algebra. We're going to calculate where things are, understand what they are. And the prof said to me, said to us as a class, is that the reality is people don't think that way. If you think about on your desk, you have a pen, you see the pen, you're not doing calculations to where the pen is. You actually don't know where the pen is. And when your hand moves to pick up the pen, it's adapting to the journey towards picking up the pen, and it finds the pen once your hand actually picks it up. And that's similar analogy to what we're doing with adaptive marketing. Is we don't have to know all the journeys and do all the calculations, but we can adapt to the behaviors when the person's engaging with us. So really the idea of adaptive marketing is personalized journeys where we, through technology, adapt and provide personal experiences and contextual content as they're walking along the journey. And we dynamically shorten the journey where possible. So the idea being is that when somebody comes to your website or engages with your digital marketing is that if they leave and come back, if we're doing our job correctly, the journey is, of course, shorter. They're not starting from the very first step. So what's involved in this? Well, for starters, we do have to have well-defined buyer profiles or well-established buyer profiles. And we have to be able to describe who these prospects are and what their problems are, what problems they're trying to solve. And then we need tools to adapt the content, our advertising, and our messaging. And the reality is, because it's digital, we are going to have a very solid data strategy. So the most important data in this approach is behavioral data. And the types of behavioral data I'm talking about is where the prospect is, where they are in the journey, where they came to your website, how long they spent on your website, what they're clicking, how long they engage with specific content, what they talk about on the phone, what they chat about on your live chat, how long it takes them, what they bought in the previous things. These are all things the prospect actually does. Right? So it's not inference-based. It is inference-based, but it's not, I would say, speculative. It's using what the prospect does to move the journey forward. So from a data perspective, if we think about a funnel, we have our targeted personas, and they're not engaged yet. It is purely speculative. We're saying this is what the buyer looks like. We're doing our research and defining who our buyers are, et cetera. So this data is typically in our map, or it's in our slide decks or spreadsheets or something like that. But the important data in this adaptive marketing process is when the prospect actually engaged. So there is inference in this, and it's really, like I said, it's what they're clicking on, what they're looking on, where they are when they're doing it, what time they are, how long they spend, all of this behavioral data. And then the very rich data that I think is the most accurate is really the direct engagement data. This is when we're talking to people on the phone, they're making comments on posts, they're actually conversing with us. So, and the reality is with a data strategy, all of this data has to flow together so that it increases our accuracy in our adaptive marketing processes. So the reality is we need tools, right? It's a case we can't this is not a process. Yes, we can do it as an individual, and we can do this adaptive marketing for an individual ourselves, but let's face it, it's not scalable. So what I'm going to be talking about is how we scale this process. So really the different types of tools we'll be using: communication tools, advertising tools, tracking tools, and of course reporting tools. And the big part is our brains as marketers. We're going to use our intelligence and our experience to help with the process. Now, the challenge we face as marketers is a tool strategy, and there's a lot of different tools out there, and all the tools are very good. The challenge with a multi-tool approach, though, is that when you are putting together a marketing stack, what's missing in the picture is actually, it's easy to see what's in the picture, but what's missing in this picture is extremely important. What's missing in this picture is the prospect and the prospect journey. The little pieces of the prospect are spread out amongst all of the different tools that you're using, and the journey is hidden somewhere in there as well. So really, if you're taking this approach, which is a valid approach, I think that you really need to either simplify the stack or have a very good technology integration strategy so that you can understand or abstract out the journey and the individual prospects. So where to begin? Well, I think that the most important thing in an adaptive marketing strategy is to understand the buyer profiles, understand where the people are engaging with you, and take a look at your personalization tool inventory and see what tools you can use and apply pressure to the population to, again, move them along their journey. And of course, analyze what the prospects are doing and then make choices. And I say that it's very important to build your strategy at the top of the funnel. Let me just go back here. At the top of the funnel, it's funnel shaped for a reason. There's more people at the top than there is at the bottom. A lot of people are doing adaptive strategies while they're directly engaging. But I argue the farther up this chain that you can do your adaptive strategies, the bigger the net is, and the better the results are going to be. So instead of me going on and talking about theory, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change things a little bit, and I'm going to walk through a couple of concrete examples of how adaptive marketing works and how we use adaptive marketing to shorten the journey and provide, I guess, a better user experience. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples, and the examples are going to be examples that we as a company are using today to sell our products. So yes, your companies are different than ours, but I think some of the things that I'll be showing you relate to B2C, B2B, big business, small business, et cetera. You can take away a lot of the things that we're doing. You can take away pieces of them and think about how you can do adaptive marketing. So a little bit about us. So before I talk about the marketing strategies, it's important to understand the product we're trying to sell in these strategies. So our company, we sell technology. It's a integrated marketing platform where the idea being is that we have a full stack of tools that surround the prospect journey and the prospect. So from the first touch of the website all the way through to where the person becomes a brand advocate, our software is tracking everything. And then the tools, social media dissemination tools, email marketing tools, landing pages, appointment scheduling, surveys, call tracking, all of these things are applying pressure and tracking the individual during the journey. And then we have connections to the advertising platforms, other advertising platforms besides these, but the ones that I'm going to be showing you in adaptive marketing specifically relate to Facebook ads, Google ads, as well as one of the vendors who are doing presentations on this series is AdRoll. So specifically, we have a lot of different tools, but for this this presentation in adaptive marketing, I'm going to be using some of Active Demand's tools for the process, specifically our dynamic content system, which I'll describe, and our behavioral segmentation, the connections to the ad platforms, and of course, there is other pieces too for tracking and analysis, bringing the person into the marketing story, and of course our call tracking, which is going to play a very important role in this process. So enough about the tech. I'm going to talk about now how, as marketers, we're going to use the tech to sell the technology, so to speak. So the first example, we have multiple buyer segments, right? There's multiple verticals we're selling into. And so as a company, we have to identify the verticals that we want to target. And there's many of them. And I think there's not an infinite number of verticals and buyer personas. And I think that's the same case with everybody on the phone here. There is more than one buyer persona, but it's not a large set of buyer personas. So for us, one of the verticals is marketing agencies. We do sell to marketing agencies. We sell to software as a service companies, small businesses, big businesses. But for this example, I'm going to show you the process of targeting agencies, for example. So the first thing we do, of course, is the speculative data. We do research. We find a large collection of agencies. We upload the domains into the platform. We do data enrichment where we pull metadata that's regularly available publicly, like the logo, the technology that they're using, their revenue size, how big the company is, their employees, this type of stuff. So we pull in this data into the platform. And it isn't just for one company, it's for a large set of companies. And then now we have these companies that we're targeting. We're going to use marketing strategies to, it is a funnel, start from the top and move our way through the process. So the first part of the funnel for us is, signing up for a trial. Then we'll hopefully get them to book a meeting and see a demo of the technology, et cetera. So the tools we're going to use contextual content and contextual advertising to adapt or accelerate the buyer process. So if you look at our website is just a WordPress site, and it's going to have some generic messaging. And the generic messaging is going to be just like I said at the beginning, one of the choices is generic, aim high. We help companies grow no matter what your company is. And then we use dynamic content, and the types of dynamic content are inline dynamic content where the website itself adapts. And then we have the ability to do overlays contextually as well. So that means subscriber bars, tooltips, push down bars, all of these types of things. And then what we're going to do is adapt the advertising to the behaviors. So in the example of targeting marketing agencies, so let's say we get this Adriel fellow who works for this company, TopDraw, to go to our website. At the beginning of the journey, Adriel isn't a client of ours, or he's a prospect, and he hasn't engaged with us. But if he's on our website, he has engaged with us. So of course, the website's going to inject his logo onto the website. It's going to pitch this, please get your free marketing agency portal. It's going to position our products to how they relate to a marketing agency in this case. And of course, all of our little tooltips, et cetera, are going to be pushing the same call to action, which is sign up for a trial. Now, even we're going to white label the reports on the website. We're going to inject his logo. So there's a lot of personalization doing here from an account-based marketing strategy. So when either it's Adriel who works for this TopDraw company or it's somebody from another agency, our website will adapt. It'll talk about what we will do, not just for the vertical, for the person. So far, we're not doing a lot of behavioral stuff. We're just taking an intelligent approach to using adaptive content to the vertical. Now I'm going to talk about how we actually use the behaviors to adapt the story. So something that's important here is that if you go to my website, you're going to see something different than, in this case, Adriel at the beginning of the marketing buying process sees. So now we're going to bring in advertising and dynamic advertising based on behaviors. So the platforms we're going to use is Facebook, AdRoll, and Google, and we're going to use, in this case, and you can do this manually with spreadsheets, but really the idea here is that we're going to use a feature that some of these ad platforms have. Each of them names it a different thing, whether it's custom audiences or CRM matching or any of these types of names that these ad platforms have. But we're going to call it behavioral audiences because we're going to pull behavioral data and adapt the advertising based on the prospect's behaviors. So it's a case that, and this is an example, it'll start with a search ad, and then it's going to adapt all the way through to a hyper-targeted ad based on behaviors. So we as a company, we have several competitors. We have a landing page tool, so it's fair to say that we compete with landing page vendors. So a common strategy is to target keyword searches for our competitors with ads. So for example, if somebody searches for Unbounce, which is one of our competitors, they see our paid ad. Our paid ad, they click through, it goes to a landing page. The landing page is going to talk in depth about how much better we are than Unbounce. So now, let's say they search for Lead Pages, another competitor, same ad shows up. Same ad goes to the exact same page, which structurally adapts to the keyword search and is now talking about our unique compete strategy against lead pages. So we're using this contextual content, and we're taking some of the behaviors, which is the keyword search, to adapt the content. So it's fairly generic, though. It's just all we know as marketers, and if you've done remarketing, what we know at this point is the prospect has an interest in landing pages. We know nothing else. It is a very generic message. Now, if somebody searches and they click the ad and go to the ad, and then instead of filling out the form, they call. So now they're on the phone with our salesperson, and just to remind everyone, at this point in time, the technology only knows that the person has an interest in landing pages, right? And if you've done retargeting, we could, retarget this prospect with ads about, in our case, active demand landing pages. So this person here now, he calls, and because Active Demand is a call tracking platform, Active Demand knows this person on the phone is the person on that page right now. So now the person's talking to the salesperson, and he's asking a bunch of questions about our software. Oh, does it do this? Does it do that? Etc. And they say, oh, fantastic. But does it work with my CRM? And the salesperson says, well, gee, what CRM do you have? And they say, well, we're using a company called Pipedrive. Does your software integrate with Pipedrive? So Active Demand not only knows the person on the website, it's also recording the call. It's analyzing the conversation, summarized for our humans. It summarizes the conversation in this tag cloud so I can see it. But the software itself understands that this person talked about Pipedrive. So now we have a behavioral audience. We have some behaviors. This person's interests are they need software that integrates with Pipedrive. So it's a case that because, yes, we do integrate with Pipedrive, we can leverage this behavior. So what happens is Active Demand, this is one of our behavioral audiences. It'll adapt the website. All of our website will now reposition itself to how it relates to somebody who has Pipedrive. So if this prospect continues browsing or comes back to our website, the website is going to be talking about Active Demand and Pipedrive. And because we have linkages into the ad platforms, we can now push this prospect into targeted ads. They will start seeing ads about Active Demand and Pipedrive and how they work together. As well as, of course, our email communications are going to be adapted as well. We're going to be bringing in the story of their interest into their experience. So they'll see their emails will change, the websites will change, and the advertising changes to get this person to remove the doubt about how well we integrate with Pipedrive. And from a buyer's perspective, now they're thinking, all they're really interested in now is what does the software do, as opposed to, gee, I wonder if this really integrates with Pipedrive. That's taken off the table. So behavioral targeting is possible. Like I know if you haven't done retargeting already, the basics of retargeting is really, it's some kind of a conversion pixel, or you're looking at a specific web page. In the example that I showed you with the ad search coming to the landing page, typically with behavioral targeting, you're using them on that page to retarget them with ads. Right? But what we're doing here is we're adding another layer to it where we're using the behaviors, whether they chat on the chat or they talk on the phone or they click specific emails, click specific ads, any of this stuff, webinar questions, any of this stuff builds a behavioral profile. We don't need to target all the profiles, but we can take interests and use these interests to shorten the buyer journey. So whether it's the ads that the people see or the emails, the website with the dynamic content, it's really using this person's interests and behaviors to reduce the friction. So with going back to Adriel in this case, if Adriel signs up for a trial, the next stage in our buyer journey is we want Adriel, of course, to book a demo. So the website's going to adapt, and the pop-ups and overlays are going to adapt. And of course, he'll now be removed from all of the ad groups that were targeting him to try to get him to sign up for a trial. He's already signed up for a trial. So the ads themselves will now change, and they'll say, hey, you should take the next step and book a demo. So we're dynamically moving people in and out of the different ad groups. The content on the website's changing, as well as the communications. So the results in this type of approach compared to, say, the generic approach is literally we've seen a 200% increase in conversion lift, page depth, time on site, and conversion rates all significantly impacted as a result of doing adaptive marketing. So really, the advantages of this approach is there's no loss of trust through the multiple touch points. If it's a case that we're targeting software as a service companies, for example, in an ad, and they come through our website's going to be aligned with what we do for software as a service companies. And if we get their contact information, of course, the communication is going to be related to software as a service companies, value offers, our ads are going to be aligned with that, et cetera. So no matter if they're coming back to us or seeing us, the messaging is going to be consistent. And if we do it right, the messaging will resonate with the individual buyer profiles that we're targeting. And clearly in the results, it's the case that, and if you think about it, if it's done well, it reduces the friction. So it will have a positive impact on the conversion rates, time on site, et cetera, because we're giving the prospects more of what they're interested in and suppressing that which they're not. And clearly, all of us, when we're buying, it's a case that if you think about anything that we bought online, whether it's a $10 item or a $200 item, we're researching it like it's going to be a life-changing experience if we buy this phone case versus that phone case. Now think about people buying your products, which are most likely, bigger purchases. The investigation is going to happen. And if we can help these buyers make a buying decision with the right content, everybody wins. And definitely it has a positive impact on trust. Now, the downside is it does require effort, right? It's not as simple as the generic approach where we just aim high, take the person out of the picture, and focus on just the problem. And it does require a data and technology strategy, right? Whether you have a fantastic integration strategy or you're simplifying the marketing stack with an integrated marketing platform, at the end of the day, it does require a data and technology strategy. And the reality is, and I said this at the beginning, it's still going to involve choices. We can't solve all of the buyer profiles problems. We're going to make choices on the high value buyer profiles that we can adapt for. And I think the choices are still the same. They're different choices, but there's still choices that are involved in the generic approach as well. Now, from a best practices perspective, is that there is a data challenge here, right? There is no doubt. And I talked about the speculative data, the behavioral data, and the direct contact data. We need to be able to feed the data through all of our tools and improve the model. Right, the better we're at getting the data right and being able to have the data flow through the tool set, the better at adaptive marketing we're going to be. We do need to think about simplifying the marketing stack and having a technology strategy. And we need to use behavioral content. That's something that a lot of people are not doing today. It's use the behaviors to adapt the journey. Thinking about this hand reaching down to pick up a pen, it's not about calculating the exact location or the exact journey. It's understanding what is the adaptive process to getting on target. And definitely, the more you can use emotional engagement in your marketing, clearly, the closer you are to connecting with the person. And if you're connecting with the person, a buying decision is a lot easier. And definitely think about what's in it for the prospect. You need to be delivering value in the prospect in the journey. With my example, the person who had pipe drive, the value we're delivering is we're removing the story, the pain point of, I really need something to work with my sales CRM. And so in summary, I think that no matter which of your marketing choices, if you're doing a multi-channel approach, definitely trust is a big factor that faces us all. There's going to be trade-offs, and it's very important to understand that it isn't a visit. It's a journey. People are on a journey, and you have to. It isn't like like the previous webinar that we were on here with the folks at AdRoll and Optimize. We're saying is that it's last click is dead. There's a journey in there. So personalize the journey for higher engagement and higher conversion rates.